Shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Harakakadash, double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone to rule well, and Shalom to the brothers in the work of Syrian truth. Got this article on MSN, by way of CBS News by way of MSN. It says, after missile strike, Iran says it won't tolerate threats from Iraq. And it's funny because if you go on the news, all you're gonna see, the only thing you're gonna see on the news now that's being spoken about is what's going on basically with what's going on with Ukraine and Russia. That's pretty much all you're hearing about. But meanwhile, and that's the thing is like the general populace. All they really fuck with is the general, like the standard news. They don't really go into anything. They don't check things out. They don't really go too deep. And that's why it's like things will be happening in the background. Bruv, that shit's off the radar. All they're really gonna get is something they might see, a headline in someone's story on Instagram, or they might see, something just posted on some social media they follow or whatever. Or maybe someone does like a 17-second TikTok explaining like, some kind of news situation. But it says, after missile strike, Iran says it won't tolerate threats from Iraq. So yeah, Tehran, Iran warned Monday that it won't tolerate threats coming from Iraq a day after firing ballistic missiles or what it said was an Israeli site in the neighboring country. And yeah, so just laying missiles. And as far as for the Iran situation, there really wasn't a point in time where it kind of calmed down or it faded into the background. It's really been like popping off non-stop, more or less, um, for a minute. It's kind of been there in the cut because they've been developing a nuclear program, doing what they do, and you've had what do you call it? Um, they've been developing their nuclear program, and you've had the US staying fucking with it. Since Trump fucking threw everything in a bin. Man crunched it all up and threw it all in the bin. Since now it's basically like they've just been doing their thing, and obviously State of Israel ain't really looking to fuck with them, and it's the same tensions that spiked in like early 2020. It's still there, and that's the thing is it's fun. What you having is not just the Ukraine and Russia situation that's happening. China's doing their thing. You got things going on in the Middle East as well, and it's funny as well because now that the Ukraine thing's been put on blast, and everyone's saying like, oh, the man in Britain are saying like, oh, you got to open up your homes. Meanwhile, when Syria happened, they were just like, yeah, they were, I can't remember what the fuck was it. The term there was a term where it was like all the refugees. There was a term, I don't remember it, but they were talking about how all the fucking refugees were like trying to come into Europe. They're saying, look, no, we can't let them guys come in. Man, we're intercepting the boats that were coming across the Mediterranean, and they're basically saying, fuck these guys off. Meanwhile, for Ukraine, now saying like in the UK, they're gonna pay you 350 quid a week to to welcome these men into the house, to stay in your house. This nigga might not even speak no goddamn English. You don't know what the fuck, but then you meant to just welcome them into your house. Like that this shit is a mess, man. This shit's a joke. But that's how it's getting people emotionally invested in what's going down. It says it's not a neighboring country. So it says it's not all acceptable that one of our neighbors that has deep relations with us becomes a center for creating threats against the Islamic Republic, said foreign ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh. Iran will not tolerate that a center near its borders becomes a center for sabotage, conspiracy, and sending terrorist groups to Iran. He said at his weekly press conference in Tehran. Yeah, it's funny because more or less, other than it's like Iran and Syria, There's a few other countries, but as far as like the vast majority of countries in and around there, these men are just these men are just what do you call it, man? They're working in tandem. They're about the agenda of the US, man. The agenda of the beast, man. That's what they're down with. They're trying to push that forward. They're trying to what do you call it? Um, not take off that control or trap in, hem in, you know, Iran. So get taken out because that's the objective. And then you got scriptures like it says what the least of the flock will draw them out. State of Israel is going to be the deciding factor for that. So it says Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the ideological arm of the armed forces, said Sunday they had targeted a strategic center belonging to Israel, the Islamic Republic's arch enemy, in the northern Iraqi city of Erbil, using powerful precision missiles. And shit, these men have been laying missiles at each other, at a hilarious rate. Like, man have just been laying off missiles like no man's business. So it's actually it's and that's the thing is it can easily escalate because you even with like Russia and Ukraine, you've had like they had the whole thing of some guy in the UK, some fucking light skinned Jake in a gym saying he's gonna go. He's got no military training, but he's saying he's gonna go to fucking Ukraine and get blown up, by an Su-35 or whatever, or some land to land missile system was gonna decimate and blow off his kneecaps. That's what he was looking to do. Give me a fucking break. And that's that. They've actually had like they've been building up a squad essentially to go over to to basically go into Ukraine. I think they like meet up in Poland, go through the border, and then go into the Ukraine. And they have a training with or trying to do operations. Like they're meant to just be civilians, which just sounds like an undercover kind of way for the fucking what's it called? An undercover way for the what the fuck is it called? For NATO EU to kind of send forces in there. And that's the thing. It's the same thing going on in the Middle East with Iran. They'll say, "Oh, Iraqis and blah blah blah." But it's gonna be about. It's basically gonna be funded by people that are moving for the interests of whoever's looking to bring them down. So it says Kurdish authorities, however, insisted that the Jewish state had no sites in or near Erbil, the capital of their autonomous region in Iraq's north. The authority said a dozen ballistic missiles had targeted Erbil, including some U.S. facilities, in the pre-dawn cross-border attack that lightly wounded 2 civilians. And that's the thing I was gonna say is because there's there'll be U.S. nationals there and whatnot. Then that can be a spark, a tinderbox for like, oh, we need to retaliate. Because I think in the Ukraine they had it where it's like the little group, the get together group, them guys, they had said like it was what I think not a civilian, what's the word I'm looking for, a reporter from the US, a US reporter got laying down, man. He got taken out. And if you have people from EU and NATO countries, that then gives them the justification to be like, hey, look, okay, we're gonna now have to when we're gonna now have to go in there and take firmer action. So as a U.S. State Department official told CBS News, there's no American casualties, and that most, if not all, the missiles that struck had been directed at a private Iraqi Kurdish citizens' residential compound. Baghdad summoned the Iranian ambassador Iraj Masjidi to protest the strikes as Iraq's foreign ministry condemned the attack as a flagrant violation of Iraqi sovereignty. Yeah. So that's, what was that? Army to It's completely different. So with yeah, with the shit going down, it's basically just they're putting the pressure on, they're putting the heat on. It's really kind of testing, like, what the response is gonna be, because after the whole situation with Afghanistan, where you basically just had like the U.S. run off with their tail between their legs, which is basically how it appeared. That's Russians been emboldened, China's been emboldened, and then Iran, and it says what Russia will be what a guard unto them. Let me read this. It says Amos 5 and 6. No, 18. Woe unto you that desire the day of the Lord Yahweh. To what end is it for you? The day of the Lord Yahweh is darkness and not light, as if a man did flee from a lion and a bear met him, or went into a house and leaned his hand on a wall and a serpent bit him. Yes, it's not just gonna be one thing. Like everyone's now just talking about all you hear about is Ukraine, Russia. But this is gonna be what? It's gonna be combined disaster. It's gonna be like one thing happening here, one thing happening there. You might think, oh, the economy, like now everyone's talking about petrol prices, fuel prices. That's going to be the one thing, and then that's something that's come after what happened before. You had the energy crisis. Yeah, you've had a bunch of crops fail. You've had people not being hired into certain roles within what's it called? Not for food, well, food processing, but what do they call? Not pipeline. They call it food production, the food production line kind of thing. There's been shortages, which has basically slowed it down, and these things are gonna compound, because just like with the food, even with them, it's like they need fuel. They need to get that shit. That shit's gonna have to be delivered. So how they gonna deliver? Food trucks. So those prices are gonna go up, and then they're gonna have to charge more. The food's gonna cost more, or there's gonna be less. Because they might be like, okay, we're going to take less trips. All these things are going to combine. It's going to, hey, one thing's going to be fucking you up, and then some other situation's going to occur afterwards that's going to fuck you up even more. Then there'll be another situation afterwards that'll fuck you up even more. That's how peak is going to be. But let me get Ezekiel, because Ezekiel says what? Da, 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 da. Ezekiel 38, verse 5. So Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters. Well, Persia's, the key spot, because that's Iran. They changed their name. It says what? Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. Yeah, so be a guard. It's basically going to be that backing that Russia has, because Russia's what they're they're the adversary essentially for the beast, the EU and NATO. They're the adversary, they're the enemy. They're what's being fought against. So they're basically gonna offer the strength, be the guard, be the shield onto these other nations that also are gonna, rebel and basically build up to that Third World War, that big escalation. Yeah. Joel 3 and 9, it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. That's what these nations are doing. Iran, these guys were absolutely nothing, man. These guys were nowhere nothing. A lot of these nations were nowhere nothing. Like, end of World War II, it's like, what, India and Pakistan, these guys didn't have nukes. Even North Korea. Man said North Korea, them guys are fucking... the general populace is living like it's 1600s. But these men can shoot fucking missiles and blow up nuclear warheads. Like, that's fucking that shit is hilarious. The weak are saying they're hella strong. It says what? Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord Yahweh. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Yeah, that valley of Yahweh Shaphat, that valley of the Yahweh's judgment. Because that's essentially what's going to go down. It's going to escalate. It's going to culminate into that third world war. Everyone's like, anyone with a brain, in a cell in their brain, anyone with their head screwed on realizes it's very possible that this can escalate into a third world war. It's very possible it can go nuclear. Just looking at it from a carnal sense, we know through prophecy these things are going to come to pass. But what does it need to be? That mark, that charagma, that implantable microchip. That's what you're going to see. But yeah, I'll leave you there. Shalom. Shalom.